Welcome to the Republican Professor podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lucas J. Mather. Today is Wednesday, 2 October 2024, years after Jesus. Today we're talking about the correspondence theory of truth. Don't let that fool you. Just because it has the word theory in it doesn't mean it's not true, doesn't mean it's not a fact. The difference between theory and fact is a myth. I don't know how it gets perpetuated. Maybe just people don't think about it. But anyway, we're going to clear this up in a short video, 5 to 7 minutes, I'm hoping. Um, Talk about some basic epistemology. Now, this is stuff that I go through in 90% of my 190 courses that I've taught at 12 colleges and schools, 5 disciplines here in Southern California. And it's very important to get the definition of truth right. Now, it turns out there have been different definitions of truth proposed throughout philosophy and history of philosophy. I took a course when I was in graduate school on truth, how to define it, and it was a lot of material, man. And I'm telling you, I'm just going to boil it down for you. What I learned is that the correspondence theory of truth, the common sense view of truth, is the best one, makes the most sense. In any case, you do have to have a theory of truth, and I think it makes sense to have a theory of truth that accords the best with common sense. And I think, if you have to get fancy schmancy about it, that the correspondence theory of truth is just another way of saying common sense. Um, Now, that's my distillation of 15, 16 weeks studying this initially uh, for that class. I actually thought about it quite a bit for other classes, like, for example, my first metaphysics course that I took at Denver Seminary with Dr. Doug Grotice, who, of course, came on this podcast a couple times. But the correspondence theory of truth, I'm using this book right here because I think it's a good um, source. It's called the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy, second edition, and it's edited by Roberto Audi. Can you see that? Roberto Audi, actually, it's just Robert Audi. For a long time, he was at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, which is a great name for a town, by the way. Republican. Yeah. And if you go under T and you look up truth, you'll find uh, these different theories. Now, don't be too worried about this because I'm just going to summarize this for you. The quality of those propositions that accord with reality, I'm on page 929. Truth is the quality of those propositions that accord with reality, specifying what is in fact the case. Whereas the aim of a science is to discover which of the propositions in its domain are true, i.e., which propositions possess the property of truth. Now I'm on page 930. The central philosophical concern with truth is to discover the nature of that property. Thus, the philosophical question is not what is true, but rather what is truth. What is one saying about a proposition and saying that it is true? The importance of this question stems from the variety and depth of the principles in which the concept of truth is deployed. We are tempted to think that truth is the proper aim and natural result of scientific inquiry. I would also say theological inquiry or political inquiry, economic inquiry, that true beliefs are useful. And the meaning of the sentence is given by the conditions that would render it true, and that valid reasoning preserves truth. Therefore, insofar as we wish to understand, assess, refine these epistemological, ethical, semantical, and logical views, some account of the nature of truth would seem to be required. Such a thing, however, has been notoriously elusive. Now, this guy has to say this. He's a philosopher at MIT because he's not really going to take a position on this. He's going to say these are the different theories that were proposed. Now, just like anything, not all theories are created equal. Some are bad and some are good. And in this case, the correspondence theory of truth is the best one. The belief that snow is white owes its truth to a certain feature of the external world. The external world just means the world outside of your own mind. The fact that snow is white. Similarly, the belief that dogs bark is true because of the fact that dogs bark. Such trivial observations lead to what is perhaps the most natural and widely held account of truth, the correspondence theory, according to which a belief, a statement, a sentence, a proposition, etc., is true, provided there exists a fact corresponding to it. This Aristotelian thesis is unexceptionable in itself. However, if it is to provide a complete theory of truth, and if it is to be more than merely a picturesque way of asserting all instances of the belief that P is true if and only if P, then it must be supplemented with accounts of what facts are and what it is for a belief to correspond to a fact. And those are problems on which the correspondence theory of truth has foundered. Now, I'm going to stop reading right there because then he goes to talk about different theories. But he says that because it turns out that people like that, like he's a materialist, or maybe he's a materialist, I don't know. But the materialist impulse in disciplines like philosophy in the last 100 years, um, has has leaned toward kind of an atheist bias and a desire to explain as much as possible everything as tightly close to chemistry and physics as possible. And it turns out that you just can't make sense of facts and propositions if all you're trying to use as tools of explanation is the hard sciences. Because the hard sciences assume proper propositions and facts, but they don't explain those things. And so they seem like they're religious kind of entities out there, and that freaks atheists and agnostics out. But I don't think that's the common sense way to proceed. I don't think most people are freaked out at all. I think most people have a pretty common sense understanding that truth is just the way things are. And that means that if I'm saying a true sentence, the sentence means something, that's the proposition, can be expressed in multiple different sentences in different languages. That's what makes translation possible. And those sentences can be true or false, depending on whether the sentence matches the way the world is, matches reality or corresponds to reality. The last episode we did was on ideology as a means of rule. And we discovered there in Helmut Thielicke that the communists and the National Socialists that he's talking about, the ideologues that he's talking about, they they are pragmatic when it comes to truth. In other words, truth is just what works. It's not correspondence to reality, it's what gives us power. And that's another way of saying they don't care about truth. If truth is correspondence to reality, and it is, they're just kind of ignoring that. Ideology is a way of ignoring that. So that truth is not really fundamental in a political inquiry. What's fundamental is what gets my side power. And it's something you want to keep an eye on. Now more than ever is the time to support the Republican Professor podcast. Send your donations in. We're on Venmo at the Republican Professor, and we'd love to get your support. We'll see you next time.